to Unshakable with April Chapman, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. Today, I'm going to spend some time exposing some lies, confronting the culture, and then, like I always do, I stand firm on the truth no matter how unpopular it may be. So, today's episode, listen, we've got to dive headfirst into this cesspool of higher education where President Trump's administration has made this decision to freeze over $2 billion in federal funding to Harvard University. And not only do I believe it is justified, but I kind of believe that this has been long overdue. So here's the deal. According to a recent article on Just the News, President Trump, he took a very bold stance, freezing federal funding to Harvard University after they flat out refused to comply with demands to address anti-Semitism and civil rights violations on their campuses.
The federal government says it's freezing more than $2.2 billion in grants and contracts to Harvard University since the institution said it won't comply with the Trump administration's demands to limit activism on campus. In a letter to Harvard, the administration called for broad government and leadership reforms, as well as a requirement to institute what it calls a merit-based administration and hiring policy. It also includes an audit of the student body and faculty on their views about diversity, and a ban on face masks, which appear to target pro-Palestinian protesters. The demands are part of the Trump administration's effort to investigate anti-Semitism at many universities. Harvard's president said in a statement to the Harvard community that the demands violated the university's First Amendment rights and exceed the statutory limits of the government's authority under Title VI, which prohibits discrimination against students based on their race, color, or national origin. Harvard is one of several Ivy League schools targeted in a pressure campaign by the administration, which also paused federal funding for the University of Pennsylvania, Brown, and Princeton to force compliance with its agenda.
So let me translate for you. I'm going to translate that for the people in the back. Harvard, one of the wealthiest and most elite universities in the world, is receiving billions, with a B, billions of taxpayer dollars while tolerating hatred, fomenting division, and allowing complete lawlessness on their campus. And when told to do something about it, they basically told the federal government to kick rocks with no shoes on and sandals. But it gets deeper. You guys, this isn't just about Harvard University. There is a systemic rot in higher education, and I've been noticing it for quite some time. Our universities, they've become these Marxist training camps with ivy on the walls. And it's not just at the Ivy League level. I recently did a debate at Georgia State University School of Law, and it was so difficult trying to engage in a meaningful dialogue with the individuals who were there because the worldview that these individuals espouse, it is absolutely Marxist in thought. And so what I'm noticing is that our institutions that once prioritized academic vigor and intellectual inquiry are now little breeding grounds for emotionally unstable, easily offended activists who know how to chant. Yes, they know how to chant. They know how to protest. They know how to post on TikTok, but they cannot pass a basic logic exam. And now somehow taxpayers are footing not all, but some of the bill. So let me ask you this. Why are we subsidizing rebellion? Why is the American worker who is busting their tail to feed their family paying for elite students to major in gender theory and with a side of hatred for America? We have to call it what it is. We need to call this modern academia is a hotbed of anti-God, anti-family, anti-American ideology, and it's spreading like wildfire. And so what I've observed is that professors they're not teaching students how to think. They're programming these kids on what to think. And the spoiler alert is that obviously none of this is biblical, but move it aside from the spiritual, it's irrational and it's not even rooted in any sort of objective truth. Now, I know some of y'all are probably thinking, but April, I thought you was not, for big government. Isn't the government overreaching in this instance? Shouldn't the federal government stay out of campus politics, particularly on private college campuses? That's a fair question. Let's engage with that. Here is my take. When you're living off of federal welfare, and yes, that's exactly what this is, you don't get to throw a temper tantrum when the people paying the bills want accountability. This is our money. I don't understand why people think when you say federal funds that they think that is some arbitrary bank account out there that has money in it that comes from an imaginary source. No, this is our money. You don't get to take tax dollars and then use that money to protect hatred against Jews, Christians, or conservatives. Because notice this hatred is only going one way. Right? Now, if they were letting the two groups or three groups fight it out, okay, maybe an argument can be made, say, hey, this is just a marketplace of ideas and this is what's happening. But no, you don't get to throw free speech just in the trash and then still expect your check to clear. That is not how this works. That's actually not how any of this works. It's my money, so therefore, we should have a say in how it is spent. This is a discussion about consequences. Why? Because for far too long, universities, they have had a blank check to push whatever worldview that fits their woke agenda. And now, finally, we're starting to see a line drawn in the sand. And it took a president like President Trump to say, no more. We're not doing this anymore. At the end of the day, in order for our country to maintain worldwide dominance and for our society to avoid a complete collapse, we need to be thinking about how are we educating this next generation and how do they view, see, experience America? Because scripture reminds us a house divided can't stand, right? So what we're witnessing is the fruit of a system that's divorced from its creator. These institutions who were once founded on Judeo-Christian principles, now they mock the very God who gave them breath. And then even when you remove God from the education, you don't get enlightenment. You get entitlement. You don't get wisdom, you get woke. And that's what we are seeing on these campuses. So yes, I'm in full agreement. Let's freeze the funding that is going to some of these schools. And yes, it's going to rustle some feathers, but the media is going to cry foul. The university elite will scream fascism. But here on Unshakable and those who share in my worldview, we're like, we need to do something about this. At the end of the day, if these institutions want independence, they can raise their own money, right? It's capitalism, right? The private sector doing what the private sector does. If you want to use your own money for this kind of purpose, fine. But if they want to push radical agendas, let them do it without taxpayer dollars. And then if they refuse to protect the civil rights of all students, then it's time to just shut off the faucet. I don't see nothing wrong with it. Our campuses should not be places where the truth is castigated against, but truth should be pursued. It should not be suppressed. Diversity of thought should be welcomed, not canceled. And students, they should be challenged to rise above all of this emotionalism and then engage with objective reality, because the real world out there, that's how they're going to experience the real world. And then for individuals who choose to embrace a biblical worldview, those values and worldviews should be tolerated as well. If we got to tolerate your freak nasty perversion, you need to tolerate some objectivity. And so if you're a parent thinking, I'm thinking about sending my child away to college, this is what you're going to encounter this. You need to think long and hard, think beyond and look beyond the name and the prestige, and ask yourself, what will my child believe after 4 years in this place? And then for the rest of us, I say we should continue to demand that our tax dollars stop funding this foolishness. And so I just wanted to share that article with you guys. If you found this episode helpful or eye-opening, just do me a favor. Share it with your tribe. Send it to your college-bound niece, right? Post it on your Facebook feed. Let's go ahead and wake up people before it's too late. And so thank you so much for listening to Unshakable with April Chapman, where we don't bow to the culture, but instead we boldly confront it. So until next time, you guys, stay grounded, stay bold, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.